It's time for pure performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, with me is Andy Grabner, my co-host. Hey, Andy, how are you doing?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing pretty awesome. It's a
Whoa,
new day.
whoa.
What?
Whoa. You sound really different, Andy. What's going on?
Well, maybe I finally got through puberty and my voice broke. I don't know. Or maybe it is because I finally followed your advice and hooked up my Zoom handy recorder to my laptop. And I think now the audio quality should be much, much better.
A lot better. This
A
sounds amazing,
lot.
Andy. And you mentioned there's when we were talking about your voice change, you said puberty, which is what we talk about here. You said in Austria you have a specific word for the voice change itself.
Stimmbruch,
right?
yeah, Stimmbruch. And it's, well, I use Google Translate and it says voting break, which doesn't really make sense. It's more like a voice break. Your voice breaks, right? I mean, that's
Right.
That's what it is.
Well, yeah, I don't think we've ever. I don't think we have a term for that over here in the United States, or at least in my experience of the language. But you sound wonderful. It's glad to finally have you, the most knowledgeable host on the show, sounding like a professional. So, congratulations to you, Andy.
Thank you so much. Let's hope that the quality of the words that come out of my mouth at least stays the same, or maybe improves as well. Speaking of words, I think it's not just the two of us talking today. We also have an honorable guest who happens to be the one and only guest host that we had so far. And as I said earlier,
correct, years
ago, it's been about 2 years. And I think he's also my boss. That's why I have to talk very nice now. The reason probably why nobody else wanted to be a guest host until now is because nobody can live up to the expectations that people now have of guest hosts and Pure Performance, of course. But I don't want to slime even more now. I will just pass over the word to Alois Reitbauer, who is hopefully with us also on his Zoom. So Alois, are you there with me?
I'm here.
Hello, Alois. So does Andy get a raise now for all those kind words?
No, actually, he would get a raise for work. He's doing great work, so that's fine. But not for just sliming me. But he's now a much better voice, so is the whole Zoom. And we have made so much, I think, advertisement for Zoom that Zoom might actually pay him now.
Exactly. Yes. And this is not the Zoom like video sharing, but it's the Zoom, the company that is microphones. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's a handy little portable microphone in case anyone's curious. So Alois, can you, I'm going to play Andy's role here for a second. Can you give us although people know and have been waiting for you to come back on the air as a guest host, I know probably for 2 years people have been standing by like, where is he? Where is he? For those who are not in that category, can you remind everybody who you are and, give us a little bit about, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So for that one person out there who doesn't know who I am, just joking. I'm Alois Reitbauer. I've been with Dynatrace for, I think, almost 13 years it's been, and various roles. And in my role, I was leading the Innovation Lab. I was working with a lot of our technology partners and driving a lot of our innovation projects. So the Davis project in the beginning, or even before that, was working with Andy on HX Edition. Also doing a lot of our cloud-related work. And most recently, what we do here at Dynatrace around autonomous cloud management, and even more recently, about this new project called Keptn that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So
before we go in there, though, hold on, and before we go in there, two things I wanted to say is, number one, I still get people every once in a while. I still hear someone asking, "Is the Ajax edition still available?" So you got a lasting impression on that. So awesome. So you said you're 13 years, Andy. I believe today is your 11th year anniversary. You said before.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's amazing how long both of us have been with the company. I will obviously never be able to catch up to Alois. But yeah, it's been a good ride, and Alois and I have always worked together, and even before Dynatrace, we worked together. So we've been sharing the professional life for I think more than 20 years now.
Wow! and I'm coming up on my 8th year.
Nice.
So if that tells you something about how awesome it is to work at Dynatrace.
So technically, we almost have 30 years of Dynatrace knowledge on this podcast.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Alois, you said, recently, and this is really the main reason why we brought you on the show, is you launched the initiative around Keptn. And now, for those people that have not yet seen Keptn or heard about Keptn, do you want to, first of all, quickly tell us a little bit about Keptn, also how people can find it, and then we go into I want to learn more about what is Keptn, why did you build it, or why do we build it, and which problems does it solve? But maybe let's get started with the name and the initial thought on why Keptn.
Yeah, I want to start a bit early. I want to start really in about July last year, where, as you know, Andy, we all got together and we're taking all of our examples that we've built at Dynatrace, whether it was the unbreakable pipeline, it was self-healing, and a lot of other things that we used around making applications more autonomous, more self-healing, and really living this cloud-native thought process. And we gathered in this nice hotel near the Lynn's office, put all of this together into kind of like a workshop, and got some of our smartest minds at Dynatrace there and share our ideas around what we back then thought, okay, this is going to be a new initiative at Dynatrace, which we call autonomous cloud management, which was really taking the best practice we had around no ops and everything, and what we learned from our customers. That's why at our Perform conferences, and put this into a cohesive program. This program then evolved over the last half year or so. And our goal was really to have best practices, have a training course. A lot of these concepts, also what we launched at our Perform conference this year, was autonomous cloud management. So what does this have all to do with Keptn? What we learned out there is we realized that a lot of implementations around continuous delivery and autonomous operations, when talking to our customers, kind of look the same, but not really. So we thought, okay, as we're going to implement this, we will do a lot of tasks and we will be repeating things over and over. And at the same time, we will build very complex setups with lots and lots of tools together, which led to an open source project, Keptn, that can be found under keptn.sh. Yes, for everybody out there who doesn't know that you can buy an SH domain, the only caveat of this, some virus scanners might actually pick them up as a virus. That's the only downside, but we thought it's a really cool idea. And what Keptn is, in one sentence, Keptn is a control plane for continuous delivery following our best practices of the unbreakable pipeline and autonomous operations and self-healing. So all buzzwords in one sentence.
And I do want to mention that it is keptn.sh.
Yes,
right?
because
Now,
it's the German phonetic writing of the word Keptn.
Oh, nice. And why? Just because you mentioned the sh, what the heck is an sh website? I mean, obviously you have the allusion to the shell script, right? But what does sh even stand for in terms of websites?
I actually don't know. I just saw you can buy an SH website and I simply did it.
Well, I guess there must be some country out there, right? Or is it one of these new top level domains?
Yes.
Yeah.
And before we go on, though, I do want to point out that just even on the about page on the site, that this is not a Dynatrace product, right? Specifically, as you worded on the website, Keptn is an open source enterprise grade framework for shipping and running cloud native applications curated by Dynatrace, right? So the project is originating by a bunch of people at Dynatrace, but it is not quite a product. It's more of an open source project. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. So it's not the product. We still have our core product, which is Dynatrace, and Keptn is really an open source framework that allows people to use Dynatrace and everything you can do with the APIs and even beyond in an open source fashion. And just to complete this, I just Googled this. So .sh is St. Helena.
Okay.
There you go. Learn something new, a geography lesson. Look at that.
And believe it or not, by the way, that top level domain was introduced in 1997. So we could have done this for almost, over 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Alois, I mean, obviously, I've been part of that journey over the last year or so. I mean, almost a year. You said July is when we first got together. But I believe what you said almost at the very end now is for me the most critical thing. When we went out to our customers and also internally, because we started also building our own projects and tools, containerized, using Kubernetes, and then we all figured out that it seems we're all trying to solve the same problems by coming up with a new way of doing continuous delivery, by taking existing tools, by building quality gates in there. And it felt like when talking internally with our different teams, every team kind of built their own little thing. And then we talked with our customers, and they were also saying, well, we kind of containerized our apps now, and we know that Kubernetes is the way to go. But for continuous delivery, for doing blue-green deployments, it seems we still need to build either our own tooling or mesh together the toolings. And I think this is what I love about Keptn is because you're taking away the pain of having to come up with your own tooling that actually gets your containers in an ordered, orchestrated fashion through the different stages of your pipeline all the way into production. And this is what I love about it. And this is where I think when we see a lot of value in it, and hopefully the world will see a lot of value, because and I believe you phrased it that way, people can finally focus on building code again and not having to maintain pipelines.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of problems there today when you look at how people build pipelines specifically. A lot of this is like ad hoc code. It's really integration code that's scattered across a number of tools. So on average, I think we looked at some of the implementations at customers. It's 7+ tools that you're integrating. It's not test-driven development that people are using. It's just, oh, that stuff works great. And then you have a new release of your deployment tool, and you have a new release of your bug tracking tool, and suddenly stuff breaks, and nobody at some point knows why stuff breaks. Especially as you're very successful in the beginning integrating two tools, you start with three, then you start with more complex workflows, and you keep going like this, and you invest a lot of time and resources into it, and at some point you end up with a lot of code that more or less becomes your next level legacy code, but it's not application code. You realize that you have actually built an application, but the application in this case is your continuous delivery and automated orchestration pipeline. And with Keptn, we want to massively simplify it and also ensure that things are maintainable. Plus, to your point, Andy, also make it quicker. So my vision is really, I want to take, say, an Nginx image from Docker Hub and then simply deploy it and have a 3-stage pipeline with testing, with self-healing, everything out of the box without having to care about anything.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean. We will go into some of the details, especially in another episode. We'll be recording with Dirk Wallersdorfer, who is kind of leading the technical innovation team here that is actually building the core of Keptn. But what he just said is taking a container and then letting Keptn figure out how to push it through the individual stages, what type of testing strategy to execute on it, and then also validating or evaluating a deployment. Right? We have, I know there's some cool concepts that we've taken over from the year-long work we've done with integrating Dynatrace in CI/CD, which metrics to look at. And instead of kind of hard coding this into plugins every time for every different CI solution out there, I like the approach of Keptn where the deployment validation is just a part of the orchestrated workflow. So no matter in which stage your container will be deployed, after the executed tests, then Keptn will start the evaluation of the deployment and will then either promote or stop the promotion of that container, depending on how well you score. And I think, we got obviously not only our own experience factored into this part of Keptn, which we call Pitometer, but there's also a lot of other companies out there have kind of solved the problem. But I think we took kind of the best of the best and looked at things like Kayenta, how they've been doing build build evaluation and stuff like that. So, but that's what I really like about it. And as a developer, I don't have to care about this anymore because it will just happen automatically for me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also what you really don't want to care about, but not only even care about it. And you've been part of a lot of these conversations with customers as well when we talk to them. Very often, a deployment pipeline is something that's specific to one application. And the customers who we usually talk to have hundreds of applications, which means they have hundreds of individual pipelines. And what Keptn can really do is like standardize this, or at least have it descriptive in a way that you can simply, even for existing applications, bring them on the same pipeline process, which is also important for a lot of companies who have regulatory requirements, that they know if an application is shipped via a specific process, that they can easily deploy it into production. Maybe one important thing to mention here, we kind of did it implicitly, but Keptn is really built for cloud native applications. So our focus is really on Kubernetes-based applications and also applications using service meshes, in our case, specifically Istio. So we focused on these modern applications, not only first, but foremost. While there are some people who we know who might also want to use it at some point for more legacy apps, but a lot of the concepts we built into Keptn really only work well in cloud native applications. So I think the ideal point for a lot of customers, or also people out there, you don't need to be a Dynatrace customer to use Keptn, because also we want you to use it with Dynatrace. You could theoretically also use it without. Is when you really think about, oh, I'm migrating my application to containers now, or I'm re-architecting my application for microservices and moving to Kubernetes.
So I wanted to ask, with you actually mentioned something I was going to ask you specifically about, is how much of a requirement, or how dependent is this on Dynatrace? And you had just stated you don't have to use Dynatrace with it. So from my understanding of a lot of the projects we've done in the past with these pipelines, it seems like the Dynatrace component is part of the automation of and analyzing the performance and pushing forward, rolling back, correct, or even the self-healing part, where Keptn is going to be able to tap into, at least from the Dynatrace point of view, the API, pull in metrics, evaluate whether or not the build is good, push forward, roll back. Is that the crux of the Dynatrace integration? So then what you're saying is, if you did have another tool that has that capability, you could obviously customize the pipeline to work with another tool.
You can, and the idea is that theoretically you can run everything just using open source tools. It will just depend on the use cases that are
Right.
supported. So there will be, for example, a simple evaluation component as part of Pitometer available with the open source release that can compare your response times, for example, against well-defined thresholds. But obviously with the AI solution, Dynatrace, you can do way more complicated things. So eventually
Right.
we will see, especially for more complex applications, you will need a more powerful solution.
Correct.
But technically you can, especially to play around with it, to get to know Keptn, you don't have to rely on Dynatrace as a solution there. Also, we obviously want you to use it.
Yeah, and I just bring that up so listeners understand this is not just a Dynatrace integration. This is more of that full-on pipeline kind of piece that you're building out here. And this is something that I think, according to how, Andy, I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was when we were talking to Nikki or so, who was it before? Priyanka. Yeah, you were bringing it up, how we're really looking to kind of turn this into something that can be used enterprise-wide by a lot of people, right? So, and that's the only reason I'm taking that, well, also because we don't like to also only talk about Dynatrace on the podcast, but also just to bring up the idea that, it's not APM specific. This is going to solve much larger, be a much larger piece of your pipeline than just the APM side.
Yeah, so I described it in the beginning. So what we really start to call Keptn right now, not just us, also other people who we explained it to, is really a control plane for continuous delivery and the unbreakable delivery, but also for automated operations. And this is actually nothing that we really invented.
Right.
To be honest, this is something that comes from the networking space. So in the networking space, if you look at a networking space, like a long time ago, you had all of these different hardware appliances that you were running, and each had their own web interface, which is great. But once you're running lots of them, it's not that great anymore. So you want to separate what was there called the control plane from the data plane. And if you're on the top, obviously, of the control plane, you would define what your application is, like your networking stack or your networking environment. And if you look conceptually, like at maybe 100,000 feet, a computer network is very similar to continuous delivery pipeline, because what they're doing, they're ensuring that certain content, in the case of a network packets, get shipped to a well-defined destination where intermediaries, while they're checked for different criteria, like do all packages will leave, arrive, do we need to do retransmissions? You might have security checks, you might have netting rules where you're changing the content of stuff, and so forth. And the same is pretty much true when you look at continuous delivery. You're shipping an artifact, in this case, not a network packet, to an ultimate goal, which is production, where a number of steps, where some transformations occur, where checks occur. And we believe if it works for very large networking environments, this concept of separating the control plane from the actual data plane or the execution plane, then it should also work very well for continuous delivery and automated operations.
And I think that's actually, I think, is the first time I listened to this explanation from the network side, and I think it's fascinating, especially now what you said, the decoupling. And I believe this is something we need to stress here, that the decoupling means we can, I mean, Keptn itself is an event-driven framework where, like you said, Alois, if a new artifact comes in that you want to push from inception of the artifact, when you first see it, all the way into production, the new artifact will trigger an event, which then causes Keptn to then execute certain actions. But actually, Keptn doesn't execute actions. Keptn only issues another event, like, hey, there's a new artifact and we need to deploy it into a certain environment using, let's say, a shadow deployment or a dark deployment or a blue-green. And then we need to have somebody executing the tests. And what I find so nice with Keptn is that we decoupled it so that the actors are actually services that can be implemented, right? And Alice, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the current version of Keptn, we have services for instance for GitHub, where we can make GitHub updates because we follow the GitOps approach. We have services for Jenkins to execute Jenkins pipelines. We have a service that is listening for a Docker registry notification, and this also allows us to then provide easily new integrations with other tools that companies out there in the large enterprises actually use, because not everybody is using Jenkins or GitHub or the standard Docker registry. People are using Bitbucket, they're using QuickBuild, they're using other tools. And the nice thing about Keptn is we're not locking them in, but we are actually allowing them to pick some of the tools that they already have integrated. Maybe for certain things they want to move over to a new pipeline anyway, then I'm pretty sure we have the service that integrates with that piece or with that tool. But I think large portions are also now completely covered, especially orchestration, by Keptn. And I think this is what I love about it.
Yeah, so what we really built into Keptn is all those best practices for cloud-native deployment options. You mentioned dark deploys, shadow deployments, blue-green deployments. Obviously, we also support direct deployments into a stage. This comes out of the box, but the way it comes out of the box is we define those messages and those message flows, and you plug in the tools that you want to use. And it's not just us not locking in people, it's also not people locking in themselves, which you did in the past. Because what you built in the past, you built a direct API to API integration. And very often, then maybe even run like in your own gateway in some way or another, connecting, I don't know, your Docker container registry directly to GitHub via a small service that you run in between. And with Keptn, everything is really using a standardized messaging format. So on the background, Keptn is running on Knative services. So Keptn itself is running in Kubernetes. And it uses cloud events, so well-defined events for everything that's happening throughout continuous delivery, but also everything that happens through an automated operations process, like for self-healing and so forth. So all of these events are well-defined, and the only thing you need to do, you have to describe what you want to do in a certain situation, and then you create your own Knative service that then obviously can talk via a proprietary API to your product. And the other nice thing is that you can reuse best practices from others. So assume that there's a company out there and you really love the way they deploy their code, that they build their pipelines, they have the testing procedures, and you absolutely love the way they do it. But there's one tool that you have to use within your company that's not part of this pipeline. So you can't use it, right? So we have to rebuild more or less everything from scratch. With Keptn, you have a lot of flexibility because there's this control plane is actually built around two core concepts. One is what we call shipyard files. What a shipyard file really defines is which stages that you have for a pipeline and how this stage is supposed to behave. So in my shipyard file, I would define I have a dev stage. And my approach is I want to do a dark deploy, then I want to do a functional test, and I want to do a blue-green deploy. And then I want to run a performance test, and then I want to promote it. And this is what I can define for each and every step or for each and every pipeline stage. And currently, we're working on the second core concept, which technically is already part of Keptn today. It's just a bit cumbersome to implement right now, which is uniforms. So a uniform now defines which tool you want to use for certain events, which event subscribers you're more or less using. So I say I want to use, for example, the built-in GitOps provider, or I want to use Weaveworks. I want to use Spinnaker as my deployment automation tool, or I'd like to use Excel Release. And you can go on like this. And what you now get is complete flexibility in the way you build your continuous delivery pipelines, but also how you build your operations automation. So whether on the operations side you want to use Ansible for self-healing, or again, you want to use Spinnaker maybe in some certain situations, or you want to use ServiceNow processes that you're running. You have all this flexibility, and you describe this in your uniform files. Another combination of uniforms and shipyard files suddenly gives you full flexibility. So I can take your shipyard file, combine it with my uniform. I can follow your process best practices and just use different tools, which might even be valuable if it's just one company where one project uses one set of tools, another project uses another set of tools, but still you use the same pipeline definition. And at the same point, if you have a certain set of tools and you want to change the way they are orchestrated or interact with each other, you can change the shipyard file. So for some, say, more front and center, more modern applications, you might have a much less strict release process than for your core applications. And you might define like one is just running maybe on one stage and you deploy directly into production, experiment really quickly, while the other has a 4-stage pipeline, but you're going to use the same tools. This is the flexibility you would get with shipyard files. So the combination of both gives you the most flexible way to build an unbreakable delivery and also operations automation solution that you can imagine without having any hardwired connections. You can exchange pieces on the fly if you want to switch from 3 stages to 4 stages. You could do it. If you want to replace one tool with another one, you could do it as well.
That is pretty cool. Now as I think of it, so Alois, correct me if I got this wrong, but I think I got it right. If we decide as a company, all of our projects that are mission critical have to have a 3-stage pipeline, but then I let my individual teams pick which tools they prefer, maybe where they have experience, where they have already maybe built some artifacts. So I can say, I define a shipyard file that says dev stage prod. In dev, I do my API tests and functional tests. In stage, I do my performance tests. And in prod, obviously, I do my, let's say, blue-green deployment. Then I can define this shipyard file. I give it to all of my teams that are building the mission-critical apps. And then they can, through the uniform, say, well, this team is deploying this using AWS Code Deploy because they're running on AWS. The other team is using Ansible or something else to deploy. But the configuration stays the same. And thanks to the shipyard option, I just automatically swap out the tools that will be kind of triggered by Keptn when a new artifact is there and it has to get promoted into a stage when the tests have to be executed. So I could even replace testing tools. Some may say for API tests, I use JMeter. Some may have Neotis. So, and if I understand this correct, this really allows me, and this is where the enterprise grade actually comes in. I can, on the enterprise, define my pipelines, and through the uniforms, I can automatically say how these pipelines get executed, who is acting upon the different events. And this is pretty amazing.
And think about it, in some cases, you might even have to change the tools simply because of the very nature of the application that you're building. You might define that you need a performance test in your staging environment and might have to run it for a couple of hours until you promote something. But it's a significant difference if you're testing an API-based application versus you want to test an application that's running in the browser and also want to test part of the code that's running in the browser. So you might have to exchange which tool that you're using, not just by replacing like your entire tool chain, but by the very nature of the application that you're running, and also for other tools along the line. So the way I see it, it allows you to build opinionated pipelines. So you can be very opinionated what you want your pipelines to look like, but still with a lot of flexibility. So it's not locking you into a certain set of tools or into a very rigid process. And also the opinionated pipeline is something that you define as the end user. It doesn't come with Keptn per se. Keptn itself is very open in what it allows you to do. The only thing where you have an opinionated piece in Keptn is really how we have these event flows for a shadow deployment, for a blue-green deployment, for a functional test, for a performance test, and so forth.
And I think that opinionated piece is important too, because we've been hearing more and more lately that you really need to put guardrails around in your pipeline so that people just don't really go all over the place and it becomes unmanageable. The idea that your CI/CD pipeline is going to turn into your next batch of legacy code, right? Where it's going to get unmanageable and unwieldy. So I really, really love the idea that Keptn itself is not opinionated, but you can build your instance to be opinionated so that you force people into those pens to keep everything kind of running smooth. I do also want to point out, you're talking about a lot of this really great stuff. And on the website, again, it's keptn.sh. There are a lot of examples and walkthroughs on some of these things, performance as a service, production deployments, runbook automation, where you even show how to set it up and integrate it with a free instance of ServiceNow. So if a lot of what can I do with Keptn, I keep saying Keptn, right? You all keep saying Keptn. Anyway, if a lot of what you can do with Keptn isn't completely clicking, you can, and I'm going to do this myself, obviously, you can go to the Keptn website and go through the walkthroughs. They have all the example applications. There's even some videos, right? So I think you've all really done a great job in helping people get started and get the basis and foundation of understanding of how to make this all work. So kudos to you for that as well.
Hey, there's one more thought that I just had, Alois, and I think this is also something we've seen with the people we've worked with. Now, taking, let's say, an enterprise, they have 100 projects, and that means they probably have dedicated resources now that need to maintain all these pipelines. And let's say some new regulation happens that forces this enterprise to add an additional check into all of the delivery pipelines before they deploy it into prod or before they do something. Now, in the old days, before Keptn, that would mean you need to spend a lot of engineering resources to update all of your pipelines out and all the different sorts of tools, and then figure out where's the right place and how do I integrate this tool. So for instance, a security check tool. And with Keptn, I just change or update the uniform, I guess. And then I say, hey, I now want to also invoke the security tool every time I deploy an artifact into a certain stage, or after the tests are executed in that stage, or as part of the deployment validation.
Yeah, even not just like long-term changes, think even about short-term changes. We talk to a lot of customers who have something like lockdown periods. I could even get this flexibility on the fly. So I'm assuming I'm a big e-commerce shop. And throughout the year, I'm totally fine that my people are experimenting. So I put most of my application on self-healing and working with blue-green deployments, A/B tests. I let them do pretty much whatever they want to within certain guardrails, obviously. But then the day comes closer for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. I start to see this differently. So I'm just updating my shipyard file that now every deployment that makes it into production requires my manual approval, for example, via Jira, Task, or ServiceNow workflow. And after this 1 week, I'm changing it back. These are also use cases that nobody ever thought about before because they couldn't do it. That would mean touching a massive amount of continuous delivery and automation code. With Keptn, these are use cases where you can say, yeah, let's do this. Let's give people more flexibility, remove flexibility here a bit as we go. Because otherwise the implementation of this change will take longer than the time frame that you want to use it for. So there's also some quick experimentation that you can get out of the usage of Keptn for how you want to ship and deliver applications.
That's completely then changing the way how you would, for instance, also POC new tools that you want to embed in your pipelines. I just know that just like last week, I talked with one of our teams in Detroit, and they are just going through a bake-off between different vendors that are providing solutions as part of the CI/CD pipeline. And in order for them to do the proof of concept right now, they basically need to completely reintegrate this tool and the first tool and the second and the third tool to really figure out how it really works in some of their pipelines. So they need to touch every pipeline, need to bake it in. With Keptn, this would just mean, well, I just change the uniform and update it through the Keptn CLI. And then all of my pipelines that are using that uniform, or that I updated the uniform with, will now all of a sudden use tool X versus Y.
You can even go further than this. Because the way Keptn is built, even with the CLI, is that everything is a cloud event. You can even have one environment just issue as a promotion step another Keptn command, like a new artifact command. And suddenly you can have these tools running in parallel. So you can deploy those three environments in parallel, and you just have the Keptns talk to each other. So you could run these three tools in parallel and, for example, check which one is, for example, finding vulnerabilities that the other doesn't, which one is faster, which one leads to the better results, or which one reacts quicker if we think about runbook automation. So it gives you full flexibility. And the nice thing is it's flexibility that you can control because everything is code, everything is centrally deployed and version controlled. And also other people know how to use those tools. What I usually like to challenge people if they tell me they have this great team who builds continuous delivery code, this whole productivity engineering team or automation engineering or whatever they call these teams. I ask them, okay, so how long would it take you to get me all the code that you need for your every automation from a deployment and operations perspective? Like find all of it or draw it here on the map, how it works for application X, Y, Z. Usually this takes them quite a while to figure it out. It sounds easy in the beginning, but when you really ask them to get all the artifacts, they have a hard time to do so. But having everything version controlled, it's as well defined as the rest of the software development process, which I think is very important.
That's pretty cool. Hey, I know we do have a second. I just want to remind listeners, we will have another episode on Keptn with Dirk, where we dive a little deeper into the architecture of Keptn, talking about the events, how the workflows actually look like, and how people can obviously contribute to Keptn itself, how they can test it out. But Alois, maybe because this is something we should tell people, how can people, besides going to keptn.sh, how can people contribute? How can we make sure that we are actually building the right things at the right time? Can we do a shout out and say, hey, this is what we need, this is what we hope the community to give to us? What can we tell them?
Yeah, so when we started Keptn from the very beginning, we really wanted to have like a poster child open source project for Dynatrace. So we followed all the best practices. There are 2 weekly community meetings. There was actually one today where we've shown some of those things. Everything is handled via GitHub, so you can reach us by just dropping an issue on GitHub, which people do. There's a Slack channel that you can interact with if you have like questions that usually go deeper than what you want to file with an issue. And ideally, what you do is you just give Keptn 0.2, which is our current pre-release version, a try for your application, and then you just simply engage with us. If you have a great use case and you want to share it in one of our community meetings, you're more than welcome. Just let us know, hey, I've done this, and just want to share my experience. Feel more than free to do it. Obviously, you can file bugs if you have some, and I'm sure we do have some because there is no software without bugs out there. But the best way is really getting started with the latest pre-release version and interact with us via all of these channels. So obviously with Slack, you have the whole development team there that you can interact with. If you want to build a custom service right now, I mentioned in the beginning, this is not yet as convenient as we see it to be in a couple of months from now. I would really recommend you directly get in touch with us so that we can help you to bootstrap this activity and save you a number of, or give you back a couple of hours that you would otherwise maybe use to get things up and running.
Mm-hmm. And also there's a nice page. If you go to keptn.sh, so keptn.sh, and then click on the About link, there's a nice list of the email, the Slack channel, the Twitter account, and also the link to the community meetings. So that's for people that want to learn more. And by the way, Alois, and also at the time of the recording, it's April 1st, and things are moving fast. This will probably air soon, but as I said, if you listen to this at a later point in time, then make sure that you are double checking on which date Keptn is currently. There's a lot of great things that happen, as Alois said, on a bi-weekly basis. So every other week there's going to be the community updates, and innovation is fast within Keptn as well. So it's a lot of cool stuff that is happening, and the more people that contribute, the better it is for all of us.
So Andy, I think do we need a summarator on today's show?
I think
you kind of I think you kind of did one there. But maybe I think a summarator would be.
I want to do one summary attempt though, because obviously Alois and I have been working on this for a while, and we kind of know what the problems are that we solve, but to kind of summarize it, we believe that a lot of organizations that are now moving towards cloud native, while Kubernetes is great and Kubernetes solves a lot of problems on how to manage containers, it does not solve the continuous delivery challenge. And I think this is what Keptn addresses. Keptn is, as we said in the podcast, an opinionated framework where you can build your pipelines. And thanks to the combination of shipyard files, which define how your pipeline should look like, and the uniforms, which defines which tools you want to use, you're completely flexible of how your individual pipelines in your individual projects and on your individual platforms that you're using should look like. I think what I also love about Keptn is it includes all of these best practices that we have seen within our organization, within our customers, but also in the industry, like automated deployments in multi-stage environments, supporting deployment models like blue-green, shadow, dark, canary. And it also has quality front and center. That means every time an artifact gets deployed into a stage, we make sure, A, we don't break that stage thanks to all these deployment models, and B, we execute the right tests, and C, we automatically validate the deployment so that we only promote good code into the next stage. And I think that's really cool. And thanks to the work that Alois and now Dirk and team, and hopefully now the rest of the global Kubernetes CNCF community is doing, Keptn is so easy to use. Check out keptn.sh, walk through the use cases that are already out there, and see it for yourself, how you can deploy it and how you can especially then onboard your own services and see how it automates and orchestrates your pipelines.
I might just want to mention one thing here. It's obviously not just for the deployment, but also for the self-healing piece, which I think is key too, because a lot of people ask us, how do you build a self-healing application, or how do I automate some of my operational tasks? And this is where Keptn can help you too. So we should mention this as well. It's not just, under exclamation marks, the delivery, but also keeping things running once they are in production, which I think differentiates the Keptn project from some of the other approaches out there that focus on a delivery-only model. And once something is in prod, there's not a lot that the framework of the project offers you to keep your applications running.
And I think that's an important point. Thanks for bringing that up, Alois, because a lot of people are interested, I think, in the self-healing aspect, but there's always that, well, how do I find time to build that into my pipeline, and how do I find time to do X, Y, and Z with it? And this is going to go a long way in simplifying that. So that's a really excellent point. Well, thank you very much, Alois, for joining us today. I think be interesting someday to see if you can ever be a repeat guest host. But in the meantime, you and your team are doing awesome work with Keptn. And Andy, I know you're a part of this project partially, or I know you work a lot closer with it. I'm going to definitely start going through some of the walkthroughs myself, Andy. So I'll probably be bugging you like, I can't get this to work because I'm an idiot. But I'll let you know. Alois, any final thoughts? If you had to, is there any pie in the sky vision for Keptn that you hold dear, or something that you would really love to see happen with it?
I think we all share the same vision here, building cloud-native applications, that one day we as developers just really deploy code and really don't have to worry about anything that happens across all stages, and also in operations, except obviously some really weird and hardcore use cases. But we really can focus on just shipping applications, having them run, now also having them self-heal and manage. A vision that started with Kubernetes, where it helped us a lot, especially on the infrastructure and level, but now also more and more on the application layer, and eventually also on the business layer. Because what you obviously could do as well, we didn't talk about this today, but you could also say if your Mac conversion rates go down, I want to do a rollback in production. So Keptn goes a bit further there. So ideally, maybe in 5 years from now, if you're a young developer and you're deploying a first application into production and that's managing itself, you see it more as like you see your car engine today. You understand kind of how it works, but you don't have to do any of the magic. You don't have to assemble it or build it. You can really focus on the really interesting parts. And I think that's the bigger vision here, focusing more and more on the interesting parts and not so much on the keeping the lights on pieces. And obviously making the world a better place.
Always. Can't we all just get along? All right. Well, thank you very much for being on. And as always, if anybody else has any questions, comments, or topics, ideas they'd like to have us explore on the show, or if you want to be a guest yourself, you can reach out to us at pure_DT on Twitter, or you can send an old-fashioned email to pureperformance@dynatrace.com. Definitely hope everyone checks out the Keptn website, keptn.sh. As we mentioned a few times, there's some really great walkthroughs and example applications to try it out with. And I'll be really interested to see what people start doing with this over time. So thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. See ya.
All right. Thanks.
Okay,
Bye
bye
bye.
everyone.